Chapter Outline Introduction Ethical Frameworks, Utilitarianism, Kantianism, Virtues and Character, Justice Confronting Moral Dilemmas, Fiduciary Responsibilities, Common Moral Dilemmas Faced by Organizations, The Role of the Individual in Confronting Moral Dilemmas, Corporate Social Responsibility, Economic, Legal, and Ethical Responsibilities. Corporate Social Responsiveness. Is corporate social responsibility good for business? CSR is a competitive advantage. Learning objectives. After reading this chapter, you should be able to: 1. Differentiate between various ethical frameworks and describe how they influence the way managers navigate complex ethical decisions. These ethical frameworks can provide guidance when the interests of a company conflict with the interests of society. How does a manager decide what trade-offs are most important and relevant? A manager's personal moral philosophy and understanding of what is right and wrong often play an important role in confronting ethical dilemmas. Some individuals, who take a utilitarian approach, believe that morality is derived from making decisions that produce the greatest good for the greatest number of people. Other individuals believe that morality is derived by motives and moral obligations. They believe that individuals must make the right decisions for the right reasons. Still others base moral decisions on their conception of justice. 2. Describe the different types of moral dilemmas that managers face both inside and outside their organizations. Organizations have long been confronted by common moral dilemmas in their relationship to the environment, consumers, and employees. As the business landscape evolves, organizations will need to constantly reassess their relationship to these constituents to ensure that they are properly addressing them. Ultimately, individuals make decisions, and some of the difficult dilemmas faced by individuals involve conflicts of interests, insider trading, trade secrets, and bribery. When businesses or individuals fail to navigate these dilemmas in an appropriate and ethical way, they can be susceptible to whistleblowing, then lawsuits. 3. Explain the ethical, legal, and financial obligations of a business and how these influence the firm's approach to corporate social responsibility. CSR is an application of ethics in business whereby businesses are expected to engage in socially responsible behavior. A firm has economic, legal, and ethical responsibilities to shareholders, customers, employees, and the public. Therefore, firms must balance competing interests and priorities to remain competitive. This is part of the stakeholder view of management. 4. Outline the link between corporate social responsibility and the overall performance of a firm. The link between CSR and financial performance of a firm is not always clear. What is clear is that CSR should not be pursued in a vacuum. CSR can be a competitive advantage if it is linked with a firm's strategy and business activities. Being socially responsible in a strategic sense allows firms to apply considerable resources, expertise, and insight to activities that benefit society and that have economic impact. Key terms: conflict of interest, corporate social responsibility, CSR, corporate social responsiveness, distributive justice, economic responsibilities, ethical responsibilities, ethics, fiduciary, insider trading, justice, Kantianism, legal responsibilities, morality, privacy, procedural justice, strategic CSR, trade secrets, utilitarianism, virtue ethics, whistleblowing, ethics, the study of moral standards and their effect on behavior and conduct, morality, the standards that people use to judge what is right or wrong, good or evil, utilitarianism, the ethical philosophy claiming that behaviors are considered moral if they produce the greatest good or utility for the greatest number of people, Kantianism, an ethical philosophy claiming that motives and universal rules are important aspects in judging what is right or wrong, virtue ethics, an ethical philosophy claiming that morality's primary function is to develop virtuous character, justice, an ethical philosophy that provides the framework for society to judge what is morally right or wrong, fair or unfair, and establishes ways to evaluate or punish those who behave in immoral ways, distributive justice, a subset of justice that deals with the distribution of wealth among members of a society, procedural justice, a subset of justice claiming that rules should be clearly stated, consistently obeyed, and impartially enforced, fiduciary, a person who is entrusted with property, information, or power to act on behalf of a beneficiary, privacy, a person's right to determine the type and extent of information that is disclosed about him or her, conflict of interest, conflicts that occur when employees or managers engage in activities on behalf of the company and have a personal interest in the outcome of those activities, insider trading occurs when a manager uses inside information to bet for or against a company's stock before that information is publicly available, trade secret, any type of information used in conducting business that is not commonly known by others. It often provides a strategic advantage for a company over its competitors. Whistleblowing, the release of evidence by a member of an organization that proves illegal or immoral conduct to executives in a company or regulating agencies outside a company. CSR, business's obligation to pursue policies, decisions, and actions that align with the objectives and values of society. Economic responsibilities, a business's duty to make a profit and increase shareholder value. Legal responsibilities, a business's duty to pursue its economic responsibilities within the boundaries of the law. Ethical responsibilities, a business's duty to meet the expectations of society beyond its economic and legal responsibilities. Corporate social responsiveness, the practice of businesses responding to pressure from society to engage in socially responsible ways. Strategic CSR, corporate social responsibility activities that are directly related to business activities so that they can combine social welfare with financial welfare. Self-reflection, what are your ethical beliefs? Ethics is the study of morality, and morality is defined as the standards used to judge what is right or wrong, good or evil. Our ethical beliefs are influenced by life experiences, cultural heritage, and personal values. Reflect upon your ethical beliefs by responding true or false to the following statements. 1. Behaviors are considered moral if they produce the greatest good for the greatest number of people. 2. Right or wrong actions should be judged solely by their consequences, not by their intent. 3. People should seek to maximize the total good of their actions even when this means ethical rules are violated. 4. Rules are designed to produce good consequences. 5. Motives are important when judging ethical behavior. 6. People should use a standardized process when making ethical decisions. 7. When people confront a difficult decision, their values or morals should guide their actions. 8. Ethical behaviors are the result of conforming to societal expectations. 9. An evaluation of ethical practices should consider differences in the values, opinions, and beliefs of others. 10. Managers should consider the social impact of their decisions. Based on your responses, what are your views on ethics? How do you think your ethical beliefs will influence your managerial behaviors? Introduction. Mark Yang was excited about his summer internship for a technology security firm. He felt his previous internships in business education would allow him to contribute to the market research and product development efforts for one of the company's core products. Yang's initial excitement turned to concern after a conversation with his direct supervisor. His supervisor asked Yang to represent himself as a student working on a school research project when he conducted the market research. The supervisor believed that existing and potential customers would be more open to talk about their core concerns and issues if they were not speaking with a company representative. Yang felt deeply conflicted about the request. He really liked the company and wanted to do well so that he could secure a permanent position after graduation. As he thought about the situation, he believed that a case could be made to justify the company's request. He technically was a student, after all. As Yang continued to contemplate the issue, though, he grew increasingly uncomfortable about having to misrepresent himself. He did not know what to do. What, on the surface, may seem like a simple choice between right and wrong is not always so simple, especially when there are personal costs that one must pay. For instance, Yang believes that if he does not do what is asked, he will not get a permanent offer. Does this seemingly small misrepresentation warrant a loss of a career opportunity? From an outside perspective, it may seem very clear, but when you are in the midst of the situation, it can seem quite murky. As a manager, you will face many ambiguous situations. Decisions will have no clear or correct answer. Carefully laid plans will face unforeseen obstacles, and key relationships may come under severe pressure, causing conflict and division. You will undoubtedly have to rely on your personal values, beliefs, and ethics to navigate these difficult decisions. Although this may seem like a simple concept, the study of ethics is one of the most complex topics in business. At its core, ethics is the study of moral standards and their effect on conduct and behavior. Morality is defined as the standards that people use to judge what is right or wrong, good or evil. As a manager, you will face pressures from your boss, shareholders, customers, and subordinates to satisfy economic, legal, and ethical obligations. Rarely do these interests align. Competing priorities and performance pressures often cause managers to ignore their inner voice, especially when they fear retribution, embarrassment, or the loss of a promotion. For his part, Yang decided that he could not in good conscience misrepresent himself in the market research project. After raising his concerns to his manager, he was relieved by the response. The manager apologized for placing him in an uncomfortable position, and they worked together to define a mutually agreeable summer project. 3 ethical dilemmas can become even more complicated as managers operate on a global scale. The morals developed in one society often clash with those of another. For example, while bribery is forbidden in many countries, it is commonly accepted in other parts of the world. As a result, managers may sometimes have a point of view that is only relevant in one region of the world. Further, still many people know how to do the right thing but do not always do it. Why? In this chapter, we provide multiple perspectives about ethical decision-making designed to help you better navigate morally gray or unclear situations. When making ethical decisions, it is important to weigh the interests of all of the stakeholders of your organization. For shareholders expect businesses to maximize profits. Employees expect businesses to provide a safe work environment and fair compensation. Customers expect businesses to be truthful and transparent about the quality of their products and services. And the public expects businesses to serve as good citizens. Recall from Chapter 1 the discussion of how the purpose of business has transformed from a shareholder's perspective to a multiple stakeholders' perspective. Many organizations today are evaluated both domestically and globally on whether they are responsible corporate citizens. In 2013, 72% of S&P 500 companies published a corporate social responsibility (CSR) report, up from less than 20% in 2011. 5 Through CSR efforts, companies seek to pursue activities that benefit society in some meaningful way. CSR can improve a company's brand, enabling them to charge more for their products, attract better employees, and ultimately improve their stock price. As competition among businesses raises the standard of living and provides more opportunities to more people, 2 key components of many CSR initiatives, sustainability and energy efficiency, have become more important. It's not surprising that the words energy efficiency and sustainability have dominated political and corporate discussion in recent years. But CSR is not right for every organization. A company needs to carefully consider whether CSR is appropriate, cost-effective, and aligned with its overall strategy. Without this alignment, CSR efforts can be ineffective and costly. In this chapter, we explore multiple theories of ethics and CSR that help companies and managers balance the demands of stakeholders and achieve economic results while maintaining high ethical and legal standards. Learning to recognize ethical issues in a corporate setting is difficult, and implementing ethical decisions is even more difficult. But it's a skill that comes with experience and training. 8 Let's look at how Merck managed one of its ethical decisions under incredible stress and uncertainty. Merck and river blindness. River blindness is a disease that afflicts nearly 25 million people in remote villages along the banks of rivers in tropical regions of Africa and Latin America. 10. The disease is caused by a tiny parasitic worm, which is passed from person to person through the bite of a black fly that breeds in river waters. The worms burrow under a person's skin and grow up to 2 feet long, producing nodules that are half an inch to an inch in diameter. Within the nodules, the worms reproduce by releasing millions of offspring that wriggle their way throughout the body beneath the skin, discoloring it as they migrate. Victims experience such intense itching that some commit suicide. Eventually, the offspring invade the eyes and gradually blind the victims. Because other plots of land are not fertile enough to sustain the villages, most villagers must live along the rivers and accept the disease as an inescapable part of life. The only drugs to treat the parasite in humans were very expensive, had severe side effects, and required lengthy hospital stays, all of which made treatment impractical for most victims. But in 1979, Dr. William Campbell, a research scientist at Merck, discovered that one of the company's best-selling animal drugs, ivermectin, might kill the parasite. Further analysis showed that ivermectin might provide a low-cost, safe, and simple cure for river blindness. Upon discovering the possibility, Campbell petitioned Merck's chairman, Dr. P. Roy Vagelos, to develop a human version of the drug. The decision was not easy. The cost of developing the drug would top $100 million, and even if it was successful, the victims were too poor to afford the drug, and there was no way to easily distribute it in these rural areas. In addition, there was a possibility that people would misuse the drugs, which would cause side effects and stimulate bad press for Merck. Merck's managers were undecided about what to do. Healthcare costs were on the rise, Medicare and Medicaid reimbursements were limited, and Congress was getting ready to pass an act that made it easier easier for competitors to copy and market generic drugs. 11. While Merck faced worsening economic conditions and industry pressures, managers were reluctant to undertake an expensive product that showed little economic promise. Vagelos conducted several meetings with his management team, trying to make a decision about developing a human version of ivermectin. They eventually came to the conclusion that the human benefits of a drug for river blindness were too significant to ignore. Many managers believed, in fact, that the company was morally obligated to develop the drug despite the costs and slim chance of economic reward. Ultimately, Vagelos approved the budget that provided the funding needed to develop human ivermectin. After 7 years of clinical testing and research, Merck succeeded in developing a human version of ivermectin. A single pill taken once a year would completely eradicate the parasite and prevent new infections. Unfortunately, Merck's initial fears came true. Nobody stepped forward to buy the drug, including the governments of affected regions, the US government, or the World Health Organization (WHO). As a result, Merck decided to give the drug away for free to potential victims. Merck then faced another roadblock. There were no effective distribution channels to get the drug to the people who needed it most. Working with the WHO, Merck also financed an international committee to provide the infrastructure to distribute the drug safely and prevent the drug from being sold on the black market. By 1996, millions of people received the drug, transforming their lives and relieving the intense suffering and potential blindness caused by the disease. Asked why the company invested so much money in developing, manufacturing, and distributing a drug that made no money, Vagelos replied in an interview that once the company thought that one of its animal drugs might cure a severe human disease, the only ethical choice was to develop it. Moreover, he said that people would remember how Merck helped them. 13. He claimed that the company had learned how these actions have strategically important long-term advantages. Ethical frameworks. Should managers only consider the law, and not ethics, when making business decisions? Many people share this attitude. Because the law is a set of enforceable rules that applies to everyone, many believe that the law should be applied to public life, while ethics should be applied to private life. Some even believe that the law already embodies the ethics of business. Therefore, there is no need to take extra steps to be ethical. The law, however, does not always result in the right approach. Consider the use of asbestos in the construction industry. Asbestos, during the 1950s, was used in building materials because of its strength, durability, and fire resistance. Although producers knew it could lead to devastating diseases, including cancer, they continued to use it. As a result, more than 100 million Americans were exposed to asbestos through construction or by living in buildings constructed with it. 16. While it was legal to use asbestos, it was clearly not ethical. In addition, ideas that are considered lawful may not necessarily be ethical. 17. For example, racial segregation was legal for nearly a century after the Civil War. While many claim that laws provide the moral backbone to businesses, in reality, they often simply reflect society's minimum standards. 18. Investors expect businesses to maximize profits, while many customers expect businesses to demonstrate leadership in socially responsible initiatives such as reducing pollution and waste and promoting civil and human rights. To effectively manage these complex decisions, leaders must not only meet competing interests and responsibilities, but also behave in ways that are aligned with their own values. Therefore, they need to have a strong moral compass. 19. A moral compass is a set of guiding principles that help an individual navigate complex ethical challenges. The compass is generally derived from a deep understanding of one's personal values. This understanding enables an individual to better find their true north when confronted with morally ambiguous situations. Yang most likely relied on his moral compass when he decided to confront the company on the summer internship. This section provides some insights on ethical principles and concepts, which should help managers develop their own moral compass so that they can more clearly see their way through ethical uncertainties. 20. Utilitarianism. Thomas Jefferson wrote in the Declaration of Independence that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Here, Jefferson proclaims what he believes to be the proper ethical foundation of a nation. Life and liberty seem obvious, but of all possible things to define his ethical foundation, he also chose happiness. Utilitarianism undoubtedly had its influence on the founding fathers as well as numerous other nation builders. One of the most popular and widely used ethical frameworks, utilitarianism operates under the greatest happiness principle as the foundation to its ethical theory. Utilitarianism is defined as the ethical philosophy claiming that behaviors are considered moral if they produce the greatest good, or utility, for the greatest number of people. 21. With this approach, people should use a cost-benefit analysis of all possible decisions and select the alternative that results in the greatest utility. 22. In business, managers should seek good outcomes for affected parties. Be objective in identifying others' interests and the likely consequences of their actions, and be impartial when balancing others' interests with their own. 23. Good things are considered to be happiness, utility, and pleasure, while bad things are considered to be pain and displeasure. Actions are right if they promote happiness or the absence of pain and wrongdoing. 24. Despite utilitarianism's strengths and widespread influence, it can fall short in some instances. For example, obeying the principle of the greatest good for the greatest number can lead to a tyranny of the majority, and a failure to respect individuals such as minorities. 25. Can a company produce the greatest good for its shareholders and also the greatest good for its employees and the community? If not, which stakeholder represents the greatest good? In a multi-stakeholder world, it is often very difficult to make the right choice. Decisions often mean making trade-offs. Other frameworks can balance these shortcomings. Kantianism is another dominant ethical model, but it differs from utilitarianism in a fundamental way. Rather than focusing purely on the positive and negative consequences of actions, Immanuel Kant believed that motives are critically important when judging moral action. In other words, people must make the right decisions for the right reasons. 26. For example, some corporations do the right thing only when it is profitable or when they expect to receive good publicity. By Kantian standards, these decisions are prudent, not moral. 27. But why does it matter whether intentions are good as long as the end result is moral? Kant argued that these actions do not build trust. If someone with bad or even neutral intentions produces a good outcome, can we trust that he or she will produce good outcomes in the future? 28. One leader who adopted this approach is Kazuo Inamori, founder of Kyocera. who explained his performance management process as follows. I graded the performance of the employees on 4 levels. The first level is the individual who achieved performance results with a challenging spirit and positive attitude. If someone does not achieve the performance results but tries with a positive attitude, they are considered the second level. If someone happens to enjoy a successful result without making a sincere or hard effort, just because of luck or something else, that is the third level. No positive effort and no results is the fourth level. We don't just look at results. We regard the process as a very important factor. At Kyocera, employees were rewarded for their intent as well as their actions and results. Think about the business leaders that you admire. What about them do you admire? The outcomes that they produced or the way they produced them. Many individuals admire Steve Jobs for his creativity, consumer insight, and design expertise. His ability to develop products that were elegant and functional has been well documented. He is often cited as the reason for Apple's phenomenal performance in satisfying consumer needs and shareholder interests. But the way Jobs led the company has also been well documented. He was considered a temperamental and inflexible leader, and some accounts suggest that he didn't always treat employees with respect and dignity. Is he a great business leader? Many would say yes. For them, the ends justify the means. For others, though, they harbor deep concerns about the way in which those results were produced. One framework that can be helpful in evaluating leaders assesses 3 components. 1. The intent or objectives of the leader. 2. The means by which the leader sought to realize his or her intent to achieve his or her objectives. And 3. The outcomes that were actually produced from this effort. See Figure 3.1. For Kant, motives are extremely important. Kant argued that people should be treated as ends and never purely as a means to an end. Doing so would be like treating humans as machines, denying them the respect they deserve. 30. According to Kant, respect for the human is not just necessary, but an obligation. 31. Organizations can benefit from having this attitude. At Southwest Airlines, for example, a key aspect of the company's mission is respect for the individual. As a result, employees felt free to express themselves and became extremely loyal to the company. Following the 9/11 attacks, employees worked overtime without pay to save the company money, which enabled the airline to continue operations under severe economic uncertainty. 32. Good motives are not the only criterion that makes a behavior moral from the Kantian perspective. Kant believed that universal laws or rules should also govern the way rational human beings behave. According to Kant, one fundamental law that should influence individual action is, I ought never to act except in such a way that my maxim should become a universal law. In other words, people should envision their actions as if they became a universal rule. Only those actions that remain logical and good under universal conditions are considered moral. Virtues and character. While the previous ethical theories focus on being obligated to people and honoring fundamental rights, virtue ethicists do not believe this goes far enough. Many argue that a person who follows the rules of obligation is not as trustworthy as a person who exhibits strong moral character and integrity. 33 scholars have defined character by 1. A person's ability to recognize the moral elements of a situation. 2. How well a person makes moral judgments. 3. How consistent a person's actions are with those judgments. And 4. How well a person can teach others to exhibit character. 34. In business, some believe that people should rely on decisions made by virtuous individuals, those with good character, rather than focusing on rights and obligations. 35. An individual cannot solve a moral situation if he or she does not first recognize it as such. 36. For most of the 20th century, many believed that the only good business virtues were profit and competitiveness. If managers let these virtues guide their decisions and behavior, organizations would be profitable and competition would be healthy. But these virtues often lead to managers such as Al Dunlap, Chief Executive Officer, CEO, of Sunbeam, who earned the nickname Chainsaw Al for his propensity to fire people and shut down plants, even when they were marginally profitable. To him, stock price and profitability were the only worthy goals of business. As a result, many lost their jobs and livelihoods when it was unnecessary. Descending from Aristotle and Plato, virtue ethics claims that morality's primary function is to develop virtuous character, similar to the way people develop skills such as creativity and conflict management. 38. The most seminal research on moral development was done by Lawrence Kohlberg, who outlined 6 stages spread across 3 levels of moral development. See Table 3.1. Pre-conventional morality usually occurs earlier in life during childhood, but adults can also exhibit this moral reasoning. Conventional morality develops as people transition from highly dependent children to more independent adolescents, but this level of reasoning is also exhibited by many adults. The final level, post-conventional morality, is exhibited by those with a higher awareness of moral values, who can understand where values come from and compare the values of different cultures. Some people never achieve this level of reasoning. Utilitarianism, Kantianism, and virtue ethics can provide useful insight into ways in which an individual may think about and act upon moral issues. As we have seen, these philosophies can also inform the ways in which a business leader cultivates a certain culture in a firm. In addition to individual actions, leaders must also consider the overall moral obligations of their firm and the legal environment in which the firm operates. Justice. Justice provides the framework for society to judge what is morally right or wrong, fair or unfair, and establishes ways to evaluate or punish those who behave immorally. 39. Justice is the notion that moral behaviors must be based on standards of equity, fairness, and impartiality to preserve order in society. 40. Distributive justice deals with the distribution of wealth among members of a society. People who follow this line of thought are egalitarians, and they believe that individual differences are morally insignificant. For example, they support heavily progressive taxes for an equal distribution of wealth. 41. But what if more capable people could provide better services for others? If they had more money, wouldn't society benefit from this inequality? Think about the Gates Foundation, founded by billionaire Bill Gates, which contributes millions of dollars to education and social good. Is society better off because of Gates' accumulated wealth? Philosophers, politicians, and other leaders have continuously wrestled with questions about what is best for society. According to the philosopher John Rawls, each person should be permitted the maximum amount of basic liberties, moral rights. But once this basic equality is achieved, inequalities may exist between members if it will benefit everyone in society. 42. Because the inequalities of birth, family history, and natural endowment are undeserved. deserved. Society should make these inequalities more equal and provide support for naturally disadvantaged people. 43. This balance of basic rights and wealth inequality is important for government and business. For example, in business, if two people have the same position in a company but one has more years of experience, that person should receive a bigger salary because he or she is conceivably more capable of performing the job well. In turn, that employee has more ability to improve the company's financial standing and consequently everyone else's financial standing. While this example may be simple, managers' decisions get more difficult when they weigh the pressures from multiple stakeholders. Procedural justice is the notion that rules should be clearly stated, consistently obeyed, and impartially enforced. It provides the framework for societies to develop laws and procedures that result in fair or just outcomes. 44. Confronting moral dilemmas. Being a good person and having sound personal ethics may not be enough to deal with the ethical issues in business. 46. Ethical dilemmas are rarely as simple as knowing what is right or wrong. Many times managers must decide between two wrongs, such as which employee to fire during a restructuring process. Because managers must interpret company policy, enforce rules, hire, fire, discipline, and supervise employees, they perform a crucial role in organizations and serve as role models. 47. It is also important to understand that, while most people are inherently good and have good intentions, there are situations where an individual may make immoral decisions. For example, as accountants develop an attachment to their clients, they can become less likely to report faulty information or even notice suspicious behavior, making them more susceptible to the influence of bias. 48. Even more striking is the behavior of some doctors. Before 2002, liver transplants were prioritized to patients depending on how sick they were. Accordingly, anyone in an intensive care unit, ICU, was usually close to the top of the list. In an effort to help patients who needed a liver transplant but were not sick enough to be in an ICU, some doctors created fake ICU admissions. How do you evaluate the morality of the doctors who fabricated the ICU patients, especially when considering the Hippocratic Oath, which requires doctors to promise to fully serve their patients' health needs and to neither mistreat nor overtreat their patients? Their intentions were well-meaning, but their actions are questionable. Under this system, the patients with the most honest doctors, who didn't create fake ICU admissions, were less likely to get transplants. Fiduciary responsibilities. One of the most important moral obligations in business is characterized by the fiduciary relationship. A fiduciary relationship exists when a party, an individual or a business, is entrusted with property, information, or power to make decisions on behalf of another party. In business, an investment advisor is a fiduciary for his or her client. Members of a partnership are fiduciaries for one another, and corporate officers, directors, and executives are fiduciaries for the corporation and its shareholders. 50. Fiduciary relationships carry a set of legal responsibilities that go beyond those of ordinary professional relationships. Those responsibilities include candor and disclosure, diligence and care, and loyalty and self-restraint. In regular relationships, each party is allowed to disclose as much or as little information as he or she likes. But in a fiduciary relationship, the fiduciary is obligated to be candid with his or her beneficiary and disclose all relevant information. Fiduciaries also have a duty of undivided loyalty, which means that they must not only protect and promote their beneficiaries' interests, but also avoid putting their own interests ahead of the beneficiaries. 51. Overall, the law requires fiduciaries to exert their best efforts on behalf of their beneficiaries and never personally benefit at their beneficiaries' expense. 52. Common moral dilemmas faced by organizations. Organizations and the managers who lead them face many moral dilemmas in their relationship with the environment, consumers, and employees. As the United States industrialized during the 20th century, businesses made sweeping progress in all three categories. They not only became more environmentally responsible, but also upheld a more honest relationship with their consumers and employees. Some of this progress was driven by companies themselves, but external advocacy groups such as Consumers Union also contributed. In addition, legislative actions such as consumer protection laws, food and drug testing, equal opportunity employment laws, and environmental protection legislation have forced companies to comply with new standards of performance. As the economy transitions from the manufacturing age to the information age, management ethics must evolve. Moral reasoning now deals with the transmission of information. Information can be empowering, but it also can be used for control, power, and manipulation. For example, companies now engage in personalized marketing to seek information about consumers and tailor the advertisements they view. While this can improve a consumer's experience, the information shared between companies can be very personal and may fall into the wrong hands. Identity theft is a major problem in the United States. In 2012, over 16 million Americans experienced some form of identity theft, and that number was projected to be close to 20 million in 2014. 53. When someone steals an identity, he or she uses personal information such as social security numbers, names, and credit card information to commit fraud or other crimes. Consequences for the victims can become serious as they spend thousands of dollars and several days to restore their good name and credit. 54. One organization that has been a recent target of identity theft is the Internal Revenue Service, IRS. Criminals have been able to break into the IRS computers to hijack the identities of taxpayers and use these identities to receive fraudulent tax returns. For instance, Rashia Wilson secured enough false refunds to purchase a $92,000 Audi. She was so excited about her success in securing false refunds that she posted pictures of herself with stacks of money on her Facebook account and declared that she was the queen of IRS tax fraud. While that picture was used in a successful trial against Wilson, there are so many other criminals who are not prosecuted. During the first half of 2013, over 1.6 million taxpayers were affected by identity theft. Environmental dilemmas. As one of the most discussed topics in business ethics, pollution has been at the heart of public debate for many years. With increasing focus on long-term sustainability and global warming on the national stage, pollution will likely remain there for years to come. The overarching question for managers is this: what obligations do businesses have to future generations to preserve the environment? As industrialization expanded throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, years, the social costs of air pollution increased exponentially. As a result, many industries have been negatively affected, including agriculture and timber. In areas with high concentrations of sulfur oxides in the air, acid rain can have devastating effects on the local ecology. More significant and lasting consequences include long-term health concerns for the general public and the greenhouse gas effect on the world's climate and weather. Water pollution is another problem that has challenged business and society. Pollutants such as salts, metals, and biological material can impair aquatic life and threaten humans' well-being. 58 For example, the British Petroleum (BP) oil spill in 2010 leaked millions of gallons of oil into the Gulf of Mexico, threatening much of the wildlife and ultimately endangering the entire coast's economy. When designing the oil rig and its safety systems, BP engineers knew that an explosion was possible if they drilled an oil reserve with abnormal pressure. Hours before the crisis, unusually high pressure readings warned managers that they should alter their drilling, but a decision was made to continue working. Later, a report on the incident revealed several concerns with BP safety mechanisms and maintenance history leading up to the disaster. Managers must determine the balance between their ethical obligations to the environment and the costs incurred by their business. Beyond pollution, environmental dilemmas are apparent in the increasing depletion of natural resources. While the depletion may not impact the current generation, there will be consequences for future generations. As companies make decisions about the utilization of natural resources, they often have to weigh short-term efficiency and profitability against long-term environmental sustainability. In many cases, companies and managers make choices that favor the short-term. This short-term thinking can result in disastrous consequences for future generations. Privacy dilemmas. Privacy is one of the trickier ethical issues. It impacts consumers and employees. While it is not protected in the Bill of Rights, people feel passionately about their right to privacy, defined as a person's right to determine the type and extent of information that is disclosed about him or her. 61 In recent years, companies such as Google and Facebook have pushed the limits on what people are comfortable with sharing, and these companies have come under criticism for their loose policies. The Consumer Reports Organization recently conducted a review of Facebook's privacy policies and uncovered some disturbing information. For instance, Facebook receives a report every time an individual visits a website with a Facebook like button, regardless of whether or not the individual clicked the button or is even a Facebook member. In addition, even if a Facebook user restricts his or her information to friends only, those same friends, who use certain Facebook apps, can inadvertently transfer information about their friends and contacts to third parties without anyone knowing. 62 In a business environment, it is nearly impossible for managers to avoid such intrusion, especially because they are responsible for monitoring their subordinates' work. Although it is acceptable to learn about a subordinate's skills and career aspirations to improve group performance, some overly intrusive practices include listening to phone conversations, installing hidden cameras, or using monitoring systems that can track time spent on the phone or the number of strokes keyed on a computer. 63 The key for managers is to strike the right balance between respecting privacy and learning about their subordinates. To do this, managers should follow 3 simple rules about the information they seek from subordinates. Information should be directly relevant to the issue at hand. Employees must have the opportunity to give consent, and the methods of learning information should be ordinary and reasonable. For example, investigating an employee's political beliefs and using devices such as hidden cameras, hidden microphones, and lie detector tests are invasions of privacy. However, as employees move higher in the organization, they are required to represent their company more publicly. As a result, more private activities may become relevant. For example, a vice president's drinking problem may affect his or her ability to represent the firm professionally. The role of the individual in confronting moral dilemmas. While companies can develop policies and make statements about how they address, or should address, difficult environmental, consumer, and employee dilemmas, the actual decisions are made by individuals. Most people make the right decisions when